Welcome to Sports Center at the Canadian Grand Prix. DZ and Tim here with a very special guest, Otmar Szafnauer. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. The last time we've seen you here in a team principal role was in 2023, but you're a man who's still very much around the paddock, very much of a respected member in the F1 community. What have you been up to in the last little while?
Well, I'm here working for Formula One themselves and just helping out with Paddock Club and Champions Club, just to, the guests that now come, give them a bit more understanding of what they're about to see. So a little bit of that. I also own a software company, the company that first developed the F1 timing app called SoftPower, and that company has now developed an application to help people with travel and their itinerary. So it's called Eventar, and we're rolling that out. Some of the teams are using it in the paddock, and which is good. And then also I've been working on, if the 12th team spot becomes available, I want to be ready for a very good application, make sure that that application is accepted.
Yeah, I want to actually talk to you a bit more about that. We were in Abu Dhabi, and you and I did an interview in a hospitality suite, and you had mentioned that you're working on trying to bring a 12th team into F1. What are the hurdles first to doing that?
Yeah, so a couple hurdles, and I think they're necessary ones. One of which is to have the financing behind you. There's an anti-dilution payment that's probably in the region of $600 million. It's a hurdle rate of getting in. But more importantly, Formula One want you to have a car manufacturer behind you that can produce a competitive powertrain. And then thirdly, they also want you to be competitive within a few years, not just be a 12th team for the sake of having 24 cars on the grid, but actually to compete at the sharp end. So those are the three main criteria.
Obviously, Tim, you want to get
Yeah, no, are you looking at an OEM to partner up with, or are you looking at trying to buy up a team that's already here maybe?
That's a good question. Yeah, definitely an OEM to partner up with. If the 12th team ever, that slot ever becomes available, then I want to have a good application. If it doesn't, then when a team is for sale, perhaps looking at buying a team along with that OEM.
And for the financial backing, is it challenging to get the financial backing that you would need? Because obviously Formula One's expensive, we all know that.
Less so now than it was in the past.
Right.
It seems like because of the popularity of the sport has grown so much, as well as the value of the teams have gone through the roof, so to speak. They're much higher than they were 5, 6, 7 years ago. 7 years ago you could pick up a team for just over 100 million. Now people are talking in the billions, 1.5, 2 billion. So because the valuation has gone up so much and there's interest in the sport, the financial backing seems to be easier to come by.
You've been in F1 since the late 90s with British American Racing
and Jack Villeneuve.
Yeah, well before that you were with Ford. You raced
That's
as
it.
well. You were a racing driver.
Yeah. I bought my first ever racing car that I owned from a fellow in Montreal.
No way.
Yeah.
So you have a racing tattoo as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool.
Stefan Prue.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I brought his Reynard Formula 2000.
No way.
I drove from Detroit to Montreal, picked the car up, and drove back all in one day.
Oh my God, I never knew that. But you've seen the sport grow, Otmar. You've seen this sport grow to what it is now. How impressive is it?
It's great. I remember when Liberty came in and bought the sport from, I think, CVC Capital Partners. Bernie was still involved then, and I couldn't predict back then how much the sport could grow. I always knew we could go from 20 to 24, 25 races. That growth trajectory was pretty obvious. But, the thing that happened with Drive to Survive and getting new fans that never knew about the sport, that I couldn't have predicted. And that's really, really grown the popularity of Formula One.
As you've spoken about, there's a lot of new Formula One, and from the outside looking in, to maybe perhaps someone who's a bit more of a casual observer, just how much goes into actually bringing a team to the grid in 2026 now?
A lot. I was fortunate, you mentioned that, I started in the late 90s. I was fortunate to be one of the early employees of British American Racing. I was the first operations director, the 13th employee. So I know what it took back then to get a team onto the grid and how much work it is. And I think now it could be even more. Back then, a big team had around 500 employees or 500 team members. Now you're talking over 1,000. And the sport's grown, the complexity of the racing has grown. You need a lot of good simulation software and simulation techniques in order to make the car go faster. Back then we didn't have that much. We didn't have lap sim, and we didn't have driver and loop simulators. We did have a wind tunnel, which is also simulation. CFD was very new back then. So all these things now, you've got to put that infrastructure in place as well as design and develop a racing car. So it's a bit more complex.
Obviously these teams are very large in Formula One, and traditionally the drivers are the face of it, but as things have evolved, team principals as well, becoming just as popular as the drivers. How do you take to that role as far as really serving as a figurehead to a Formula One team?
Yeah, so being a team principal, you were always a figurehead, and it just comes with, you have to do both jobs. You've got to be the figurehead, you've got to be out in the media, but most importantly, you have to create and motivate a team that's capable of winning. And that to me is a trick of being a good team principal, is putting a team together and then motivating them in such a way that they work tirelessly for on-track performance. And when you have that, you can compete at the very sharp end. At Force India we had 400 employees, but we competed with the big guys. And that was when there was no cost cap. So the big teams back then had 1,200, 1,400 employees. We had 400, and we still beat most of them. But that's because you create a culture, a racing culture, where everybody works for that on-track performance.
Yeah, looking at the race today, just quick thoughts on what your podium looks like. I mean, the weather's starting to get a little hotter, so it could probably favor the McLarens.
And Mercedes too apparently like hot weather now, whereas last year or in the years past they liked cooler weather, and I'm not sure they know why, but I definitely don't. But if they did, then they would manipulate the performance package so they're fast everywhere, not just in hot weather. So I mean, McLaren will be good, and everyone says they've got some trick on cooling the tires, so the hotter the weather, the hotter the track temperature, and if they do have that trick, the better off they are. So I can see Oscar doing well, I can see Lando doing well, and if Max gets a good start, I can see him possibly winning as well. So let's see. And George, you can't count George out.
Of course. And as things would have it, we'll see Aston Martin and Alpine both kind of marking their 100th entry into Grand Prix here at the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend, two teams that you served as team principal as. What would you perhaps make of the progress or where they are just in general at that milestone from the outside looking in?
Well, it's fact, right? So it's not opinion, but in 2022 when I first got to Alpine, I think we qualified 2nd and 7th here, and I don't know where they are now. Last in... Is Calapinto starting 10th? I think with the penalties.
Yeah, because Hulkenberg got a penalty in qualifying, and that bounced him back. I think it was because he went. Through a red flag or something, because that's what ended the Q3 session. It was in the wet.
Yeah. No, I mean, but now they're now they're starting 20th and 10th, I believe. 2nd and 7th, we finished both in the points. That was at race 30. Now they're at race 100. Oh, yeah. I think they're worse. So that's not a great trajectory to be on. I always say it takes a lot of work and a lot of good work to improve relative to the other teams, because they're working hard too. They're very competent. They have a lot of people. It's hard to move up the grid, but it's super easy to slide your way down. So you got to really be careful and work hard. I remember Bernie Ecclestone saying to me, look, in Formula One, if you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you probably won't win. But if you don't, you're assured not to win.
Well, last question for you here. Now, obviously, change is great, change is inevitable, and it's great to see the sport grow. But things have really changed at the Canadian Grand Prix where things have gotten larger and greater. There's a little bit of charm sometimes that, I don't know, I want to say you're losing out on, but as it grows, the garages, even fancier than they are, the paddocks now 2-story. Is there anything you can remember here from Canada in all your times, which you're almost like, there's something that kind of felt small, but was almost kind of nice in memory?
Yeah, it's funny. What I liked about it before was everybody sat outside, and as you're walking by, you didn't have to open a door to go into and see. So they had more outside seating. I like that. And I remember the boat races across the lake behind us. Yep. And those were kind of, it was something that only happened in Montreal, and that was kind of nice, and we missed those things.
Yeah. All right, well, we hope we're talking about you in Formula One in cars in 2026 instead of boats when we see you next year. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it, Otmar.
Thanks for your time.